Inside Alaska State Prison, locked down in the Arctic, the edge of the world. In most parts of the world, prisons are built to keep people in. Concrete walls, steel bars, armed guards. But in Alaska, there's something else working alongside those walls. Distance, cold, isolation. This is the largest state in the United States, yet one of the least populated. Entire regions stretch for hundreds of miles, without a single road. In winter, temperatures can fall below -30 degrees Celsius. In some areas, even colder. And for months at a time, darkness dominates the landscape. This is the environment surrounding Alaska's prison system. A place where escape is not just difficult, it can be life-threatening. But this story is not about dramatic escapes or exaggerated danger. It's about reality. What actually happens inside Alaska's prisons, how they operate, and what it means to be incarcerated in one of the most extreme environments on Earth. Because beyond the snow and silence, there is a system under pressure. A system shaped not only by law, but by geography, cost, and isolation. And for the people inside, those factors don't just exist in the background. They define daily life.
Before we dive into today's powerful story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more gripping tales. Your support helps us keep sharing these stories, and we wouldn't want you to miss any of the action. Now, let's get started.
A prison system built for distance. To understand Alaska's prisons, you first have to understand Alaska itself. This is a state where infrastructure doesn't follow the same rules as the rest of the country. In many states, prisons are placed near large populations, close to courts, close to transportation hubs. In Alaska, that isn't always possible. Many communities are not connected by highways. Some are only accessible by plane or boat. This creates a logistical challenge that affects every part of the correctional system. Transporting inmates to court hearings, moving them between facilities, even delivering supplies, can require air travel. And that comes at a cost. To manage this, Alaska operates several correctional centers across different regions, including Anchorage Correctional Complex, Fairbanks Correctional Center, and one of the most significant facilities in the system, Goose Creek Correctional Center. Located near Wasilla, about 30 miles from Anchorage, Goose Creek was built to centralize much of Alaska's prison population. When it opened in 2012, it became the largest prison in the state. But even that wasn't enough, because Alaska's prison system has been dealing with a problem that geography alone can't solve: overcrowding. Goose Creek, the center of the system. Goose Creek Correctional Center was designed to modernize Alaska's prison system. With a capacity of over 1,500 inmates, it became the backbone of incarceration in the state. From the outside, it looks like many modern correctional facilities: concrete structures, reinforced fencing, controlled entry points. But inside, the design reflects a mix of security levels. Minimum, medium, and maximum custody inmates are all housed within the same complex, but separated into different units. This allows the facility to manage a wide range of offenders, from those nearing release to those requiring strict supervision. The prison uses what's known as a direct supervision model in some areas, where correctional officers are stationed inside housing units, rather than observing from behind barriers. The goal is to reduce violence and improve communication between staff and inmates. But implementation is not always simple. Reports from state audits and local news investigations have highlighted ongoing issues, including staffing shortages, operational challenges, and concerns about safety. Because even with modern infrastructure, running a prison in Alaska comes with pressures that go beyond design. And those pressures are felt inside the walls. Daily life in extreme conditions. Inside an Alaska state prison, routine is everything. Inmates wake early, often before sunrise. Meals are served on strict schedules. Movement is controlled and monitored at every step. There are designated times for recreation, for medical visits, for phone calls. But unlike prisons in warmer regions, Alaska introduces a variable that cannot be controlled: weather. During the winter months, outdoor recreation can be severely limited. Temperatures can drop to levels considered unsafe for prolonged exposure. Snowstorms, ice, and limited daylight can all affect access to prison yards, which means that for extended periods, inmates may remain indoors almost entirely. This changes the rhythm of prison life. Less movement, less variation, more time inside enclosed spaces. And over time, that can have an impact, not just physically, but mentally. because in a place already defined by confinement, the environment can make that confinement feel even more complete. Isolation within isolation. Within the prison system, there is another layer of separation. Administrative segregation, often referred to as solitary confinement. In these units, inmates are housed alone in individual cells. They may spend up to 22 hours per day inside, with limited human interaction. Meals are delivered through slots in the door. Movement is restricted. Communication is minimal. This practice is not unique to Alaska. It exists across correctional systems in the United States. But here, the external environment adds another dimension. During winter, natural light is already limited. In some parts of Alaska, daylight can last only a few hours. For inmates in segregation, exposure to that light may be even more restricted. Oversight organizations, including civil rights groups, have raised concerns about the psychological effects of prolonged isolation. Studies have linked extended solitary confinement to increased risks of anxiety, depression, and other mental health challenges. However, the exact long-term impact varies, and in many cases remains difficult to measure definitively. In Alaska, those questions become even more complex, because isolation here is layered. Inside the cell, inside the prison, inside one of the most remote regions in the country. When there is no more space. For years, Alaska has faced a problem that geography alone cannot solve. Capacity. Despite building facilities like Goose Creek, the state has struggled at times with overcrowding. And when that happens, the solution has not always been local. In multiple instances, Alaska has transferred inmates out of state to private correctional facilities thousands of miles away, including prisons in Arizona. This decision has been documented in official reports and news coverage, and it has sparked ongoing debate. Supporters argue it helps relieve pressure on the system and prevents unsafe overcrowding. Critics point out the human cost. Inmates sent out of state are separated from their families, often with limited ability to maintain regular contact. Legal access can become more complicated. Rehabilitation programs may differ, and reintegration back into Alaskan communities can become more difficult. Times. Alaska has brought inmates back, only to face the same capacity challenges again. It's a cycle shaped by funding, policy decisions, and the realities of operating a prison system in a remote state. The cost of running a prison in Alaska. Operating a prison anywhere is expensive. In Alaska, those costs increase. Transportation alone can significantly raise operational expenses. Fuel costs, shipping delays, weather-related disruptions, all factor into daily operations. Staffing adds another layer. Recruiting correctional officers in remote or high-cost areas has been an ongoing challenge. Reports from state agencies have documented staffing shortages across multiple facilities. And when staffing levels drop, the effects are immediate. Fewer available officers can lead to increased lockdowns, reduced programming, and higher stress for both staff and inmates. Because maintaining safety inside a prison requires consistency. And in Alaska, consistency is not always easy to achieve. Lockdown in the Arctic. Lockdowns are a standard part of prison operations. They can happen for many reasons: security concerns, staff shortages, or ongoing investigations. During a lockdown, inmates are confined to their cells. Movement stops. Programs pause. Routine disappears. In Alaska, this experience can feel different. Because outside the prison walls, there may be nothing but snow, darkness, and extreme cold. There is no visible city beyond the fence. No distant traffic. No sense of normal life continuing nearby. Just isolation. Inside and out. And when lockdowns extend, that sense of separation can deepen. Not as a dramatic exaggeration, but as a documented reality of environment and circumstance. When violence breaks through the system. No prison system is completely free from violence. Alaska is no exception. Incidents involving inmate-on-inmate assaults, and at times confrontations between inmates and staff, have been documented across multiple facilities. But understanding violence inside Alaska's prisons requires context. Unlike larger states with multiple high-security institutions, Alaska often houses different custody levels within the same facility. At places like Goose Creek Correctional Center, minimum, medium, and maximum custody inmates exist within the same overall structure, even though they are separated into designated units. This can create operational complexity. because classification systems are not static. Inmates can be reclassified, moved between units, or placed in temporary housing based on behavior, risk level, or available space. And when systems are under pressure, due to staffing shortages or overcrowding, those movements can become harder to manage efficiently. State reports and local news coverage have highlighted incidents over the years where safety concerns were raised by staff or oversight bodies. However, it is important to note, there is no evidence that Alaska's prisons are uniquely more violent than national averages. The challenges they face are consistent with broader trends across U.S. correctional systems. What makes Alaska different is not necessarily the level of violence, but the environment in which it happens. A place where backup may take longer to arrive, where resources are stretched across distance, and where managing conflict requires balancing safety with logistical reality. Staff under pressure. Behind every prison system are the people responsible for keeping it running. In Alaska, correctional officers operate in conditions that are often described as demanding and at times unpredictable. Staffing shortages have been documented in legislative reports and media coverage. And those shortages have real consequences. Fewer officers on shift means fewer eyes monitoring housing units. It can limit inmate movement, delay responses, and increase reliance on lockdowns as a control measure. In some reports, officers have described extended shifts and high workloads. The state has taken steps over time to recruit and retain staff, including training programs and incentives. But challenges remain, because working in corrections is already a high-stress job. Adding Alaska's geography, cost of living, and climate makes recruitment more difficult than in many other states. And when staffing levels fluctuate, the entire system adjusts around it. Mental health and isolation. Mental health is a critical issue across correctional systems in the United States. In Alaska, it carries additional layers. Many inmates enter the system with pre-existing mental health conditions. This is a documented national trend. But the environment inside Alaska's prisons can complicate treatment. Limited access to specialized care, staffing challenges, and extended periods indoors can all affect how mental health services are delivered. The Alaska Department of Corrections does provide mental health programs, including counseling and psychiatric care. But reports have indicated that demand often exceeds available resources. Oversight organizations have raised concerns in the past about the use of segregation for inmates with mental health needs, a practice that has been debated across the country. Because while segregation can be used for safety reasons, it may also intensify symptoms in some individuals. Research from national institutions, including the National Institute of Corrections, has linked prolonged isolation to increased psychological stress. In Alaska, where environmental isolation is already a factor, those effects may be amplified. However, measuring exact outcomes remains complex. And in many cases, long-term data is limited or still being studied. Darkness and time. In most prisons, time is measured by routine. Meals, count, lights out. But in Alaska, time is also shaped by light. During winter months, some regions experience only a few hours of daylight. In more northern areas, periods of near-total darkness can last for extended durations. Even in south-central Alaska, daylight is significantly reduced. Inside prison, this natural cycle becomes harder to track. Artificial lighting replaces the sun. Schedules remain fixed, even when the outside world changes dramatically. For inmates, this can affect perception of time. Days may feel longer or harder to distinguish. While there is ongoing research into how seasonal light changes affect mental health, specific long-term studies focused on prison populations in Alaska are limited. But the influence of environment is undeniable. Because in a place where darkness stretches across weeks, the psychological impact is not just theoretical. It's experienced. Real incidents, real consequences. Over the years, Alaska's prison system has faced incidents that drew public attention. Some involved assaults. Others involved deaths in custody. Each case, reviewed through internal investigations, and in some instances, external oversight. For example, reports have documented cases where inmate deaths prompted questions about medical care, response times, or supervision. It is important to state clearly, each incident is unique, and findings vary. Some investigations have identified procedural failures. Others have concluded that staff acted within policy. But together, these cases highlight a broader reality. Running a correctional system, especially in a challenging environment, requires constant oversight. Because when something goes wrong inside a prison, the consequences are serious. Not just for those directly involved, but for the credibility of the entire system. Can you escape Alaska? Escape is one of the most common themes associated with prisons. But in Alaska, the question is different. Not just, can you escape the prison? But, can you survive what comes after? Historically, escape attempts from Alaska correctional facilities have been rare. And successful long-term escapes, even rarer. The reasons are practical. Geography, extreme weather, limited infrastructure. Even if someone were to breach the perimeter, they would still face vast distances, cold temperatures, and limited access to shelter or transportation. Law enforcement coordination, combined with environmental factors, makes escape extremely difficult. That does not mean attempts have never occurred. But documented cases show that most are quickly contained or end without long-term success. In Alaska, the environment itself acts as an additional layer of security, not by design, but by reality. Life after release. For many inmates, prison is not permanent. Eventually, release becomes part of the process. But re-entry in Alaska comes with its own challenges. Communities may be far apart. Employment opportunities can be limited in certain regions. And access to support services varies depending on location. The Alaska Department of Corrections operates re-entry programs designed to assist with transition, including job readiness, housing support, and counseling services. But like many states, success rates vary. Because reintegration depends on multiple factors: personal circumstances, community resources, economic conditions. And in Alaska, distance once again plays a role. Because starting over, in one of the most remote environments in the country, requires more than just leaving prison behind. It requires navigating the same challenges that shaped the system itself. Sent far from home. At different points in recent history, Alaska made a decision that highlighted the limits of its own system. When facilities reached capacity, hundreds of inmates were transferred out of state, most notably to privately operated prisons in Arizona. The reasoning was logistical. Limited space in Alaska, combined with rising inmate populations, forced the state to look elsewhere. But the impact was personal. Inmates were sent thousands of miles away, far from their families, far from their communities. For many, visits became rare or impossible. Legal access grew more complicated. Re-entry planning became harder to coordinate. The policy faced criticism from advocacy groups and from families of those incarcerated. Over time, Alaska began bringing inmates back. But the underlying issue, capacity versus resources, has never fully disappeared. Rehabilitation or containment. Like many correctional systems, Alaska's prisons are built on two parallel goals: punishment and rehabilitation. The Department of Corrections offers programs aimed at reducing repeat offenses. These include educational classes, job training, and substance abuse treatment. But access can vary. Staffing levels, facility capacity, and operational constraints all influence how widely these programs are available. And in some cases, lockdowns or limited resources can reduce participation. Research across the United States shows that consistent access to rehabilitation programs is linked to lower recidivism. In Alaska, the challenge is not just providing these programs, but maintaining them in a system shaped by distance and constraint. A disproportionate reality. One of the most documented and sensitive aspects of Alaska's prison system is who it impacts. Alaska Native people are significantly overrepresented in the state's incarcerated population. This has been confirmed through state data and federal reporting. The reasons are complex. They include historical inequalities, limited access to resources in some rural areas, and broader social and economic factors. Addressing this issue has been part of ongoing policy discussions within the state. But solutions are not simple, because the causes extend beyond the prison system itself and into the structure of communities, opportunities, and access. The future of the system. Alaska's prison system continues to evolve. Policy changes, budget decisions, and population trends all shape its direction. There have been efforts to reduce incarceration rates, expand alternatives to prison, and improve re-entry support. But challenges remain: staffing, funding, geography, and the fundamental question: how do you run a correctional system in one of the most remote environments in the world, while balancing safety, fairness, and rehabilitation? There is no single answer, only ongoing change. In Alaska, prison is more than walls and fences. It is shaped by cold, distance, and isolation. For those inside, these are not background details. They are part of daily life, part of the system, and part of the experience of being locked down in the Arctic. If you found this documentary insightful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real, fact-based stories from inside the world's most extreme prisons. This is the Unspoken Stories, and we'll see you in the next one.